Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Welcome to Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I'm Kat Reesielke.
And I'm Jason Hondo Ling.
And we are back to break down Obi-Wan Kenobi, now streaming on Disney+. This will be our reviews of Episode 2 and Episode 3 of the 6-part series. Jason, going to you first. Obviously, after the setup of the first episode, sort of how excited did you get with sort of these two episodes coming out and sort of throwing us a little bit of action here?
Yeah, I think once we sort of set up now how Obi-Wan was going to be leaving Tatooine. So for me, this episode was, I wanted to see what had happened. Obviously, I was looking forward to seeing more of young Princess Leia, and for me, she didn't disappoint in this episode. She did a brilliant job, and it was nice to see Obi-Wan in a different environment to what we'd seen him. And obviously, he was clearly holding back from being a Jedi. But then that sequence where we see the clone trooper, I think that got me, and that really made me think, yeah, this is brilliant.
Yeah, because the episode starts off where we're on the planet where the kidnappers have taken Princess Leia, obviously as bait to capture Kenobi for Reva, the third sister, the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Kat, what's the name of this planet?
The name of this planet is Daiyu, which translates from Chinese as Black Jade.
And I got like sort of Hong Kong vibes from the aesthetic, also sort of mini Coruscant vibes as well. So we see Kenobi sort of on the planet. He asks for some help. Sort of someone says, they don't track ships once they come in, so there's no chance of you tracking where the ship landed. He comes across a woman who he speaks to. It's a spice dealer, who was actually played by Hugh McGregor's own daughter. And she says, daughters get lost here all the time. She was once lost, and gives him some free spice to sort of. She says, a few of these and you'll forget you even had a daughter. Not quite the right solution to the problem, I don't think. And this is where we see Obi-Wan interact with a young boy who ends up introducing him to, is it Haj?
Yeah, I think so. The fake Jedi.
Yeah, so there's this boy tells Obi-Wan that there's a Jedi on the planet who can help him. When we first meet Haj, we do see him sort of trying to help someone. Kat, do you want to talk us through the introduction of Haj and sort of the tricks and doing something nice for the family?
Yeah, so as Obi-Wan's mission onto Daiyu, as you're right, the boy leads him to, it's actually Haja Estri, who poses as a Jedi helping people to escape the clutches of the Empire. And he's that typical scoundrel character in Star Wars where he does come across as a little rough around the edges, but he has a really great heart. And I do love the idea actually of somebody pretending to be a Jedi. And he does this with a clever series of magnets and buttons, and it's all smoke and mirrors just in the Star Wars universe. But of course, Obi-Wan can see completely through him. I was laughing quite hard at this point because it's just so funny of this fake Jedi Haja trying to speak to Obi-Wan. And yeah, he agrees to help Obi-Wan, of course, for a price. But yeah, just before that, he does settle a deal with a mother who's trying to help her son escape to Coruscant. Now, it's not quite made clear in the episode whether the boy truly does have force powers, or if Haja is just trying to make some cash, or if the mother needs to escape the Empire. But I know that I think the boys that he helps, I think they've said that the character's name comes from, I think it's the Shadows of the Empire book. But yeah, I did love this premise of this character, and it did remind me of the actor in Marvel Eternals, because he was also being a bit of a scoundrel in that film.
He was indeed. I think, I like how, the sort of, he's quite a cheeky guy. He seems to have generally helped that woman and child. Obviously, he charged him a little bit of money for it, but he did help under the disguise of being a Jedi. I also think this guy's got a lot of guts because he's pretending to be a Jedi in a world where if he gets found out, the Inquisitors will hunt him down and kill him. So, it's quite a scam that poses quite a big risk to him. We find out that sort of that Haj and the boy are working together in cahoots type of thing. And, they do help Kenobi sort of locate Leia. What were your thoughts on Kenobi finding where Leia is, and then the sort of the action that happened after getting into the building, sort of the spice den, Jason?
It almost, bits of it brought back sort of memories of the episode in the Book of Boba Fett where we see sort of Mando going into that like butcher's house, I think it was, where he was trying for the first time. You sort of go in, and of course Obi-Wan's going into this area that's clearly producing, like, looks like producing the spice and everything. And then obviously he's still trying not to be a Jedi, I think, at this point, and he's very when he gets into the fight with the like the goons, as I can only sort of describe them as, it's still, it's him fighting. He doesn't want to, he doesn't want to give away who he is. So it's very much, he's still putting on this facade to hide who he is. And then obviously when he finally gets to Leia, it reminded me, almost the way they portrayed it was almost the way when Han and Luke enter Leia's cell in A New Hope, and she's very much, well, what are you, are you here, who are you? And she's definitely pulling off the Princess Leia vibes brilliantly in this scene. And obviously, I like the way that Kenobi had used the spice that he'd been given to sort of drug the goons after he sort of managed to push them to one side, so we then see them obviously all on the ground in a bit of a state. So overall, there was a lot of different vibes that this whole sequence brought. Brought back memories of old Star Wars, but then with the use of the spice and that, there was almost a comical sort of thing that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up sort of the similarities to the original trilogy and Leia's introduction in the original trilogy, and
Yeah.
also Boba Fett. I think, as George Lucas said, Star Wars is poetry, it rhymes, and that was on show here. The introduction to Leia in this episode is very similar to Leia's introduction to Han and Luke in A New Hope. I thought Obi-Wan's hallway scene also gave me vibes of like Daredevil. Obviously, not quite as gruesome, but sort of close combat.
Yeah.
I like the brawl and how Kenobi handled himself quite well, but also, he managed to hurt his hand on a Zabrak's head, where Kenobi knows fine what a Zabrak is. So I'm surprised he wasn't aware of that, but he's obviously been out of training in a long time, in all not just Jedi training but also combat. But he takes care of them. He does injure his hand, gets in there to see Leia. I like Leia's response is sort of like, in A New Hope, it's aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? I'm sure at some point during this, she asks Kenobi where the army is, because she did say, my dad will send the army after you, but no, he sent one man. And then obviously Kenobi gets caught. It's like sort of a trap set up for him. They capture him. They take his lightsaber. Flea, who is the Red Hot Chili Peppers bass player, is like the leader of these goons. He's giving it the big licks. He's talking the Billy Big Balls, snarling. But Kenobi seems quite calm in this thing. He asks, "Where is the girl?" Things like that. And he throws that spice down and it activates. I love the way he throws the spice down and he sort of takes out Flea. And then as Flea falls, Obi-Wan steps forward and like takes the lightsaber out of Flea's hand. It's like very, very cool, very awesome from Kenobi. And then Kenobi obviously leaves the room, leaves them to sort of inhale this spice, which is only going to make them high, not very useful. And then he does find Leia and get Leia out of the spice den / spice factory. Kat, what were your thoughts on sort of Leia's and Obi-Wan's first interactions upon meeting each other?
I thought the homage to A New Hope was so perfectly done. It was woven in so naturally. It didn't feel like they were deliberately trying to be like A New Hope, and yet it was perfectly sort of like A New Hope. But I do love how Leia just whacks Obi-Wan with that chair. I'm assuming she sort of managed to untie herself, and then she just whacks. She was waiting for somebody to come through and escape herself. I mean, Leia is a self-rescuing princess, always has been. And I think Obi-Wan wasn't expecting that, and then he's trying to calm her down, and Leia's just barraging him with questions. And I think it sort of sets the tone for what their relationship is going to be throughout the rest of the series, in that Leia's sort of this ball of constant energy, always asking questions, so interested about the galaxy, and Obi-Wan is sort of exhausted by it all. But I did, I love how he was like, you can trust me, come with me. And, throughout all that fighting sequence, his main focus was always Leia. And you can sort of see the relief on him when he does find her, even though she hits him with a chair.
And they did give her the best line when Obi-Wan says, "We're going to pretend that you're my daughter," and she snarls back, "Granddaughter, maybe." I just thought that was absolutely brilliant, and it was so much Princess Leia that just was perfect.
I mean, Leia is sass. She is sassy.
Exactly.
Ever since Carrie Fisher put her stamp on the character, that's been the epitome of Leia, is the fact that she is this very sassy heroine, and she totally redefined what princesses could be. And I think this little version of Leia is so true to the character. I mean, I'm watching this, I'm just watching Leia. I'm not even thinking about sort of who's portraying her. I'm just thinking this is Leia. And I also love then when
I agree with
grabbing
that.
a disguise,
Yeah.
and Obi-Wan's like, put on this little poncho, which is very reminiscent to what she'll wear then on Endor, obviously many years later. But then she's like, grabbing some gloves, and Obi-Wan's like, you don't need the gloves. But Leia is a style icon, doesn't matter where she is in the galaxy. And Obi-Wan ends up having to pay for both.
Yeah, I love that. I love that when everyone's like, we need to get out these clothes. We'll not get spotted. So he's trying to take off the garments he was wearing in the spice factory. He's giving her a coat. He's talking to the tradesman, the stall owner. Tells her she doesn't need the gloves, but just puts them anyway. So then you hear him go, and the gloves, and pays for those. That was a bit heartbreaking for me because it was a bit like, it was almost like the uncle who would take his niece out and should maybe push her up and get a few extra treats. And like in a normal life, that would have happened. Like, if Anakin hadn't turned and Order 66 hadn't happened, Obi-Wan would be this type of character to Anakin's children. So it was sort of nice to see it happen, but also a bit heartbreaking that it had to happen under such tragic circumstances. As they say, Star Wars is tragedy. But yeah, so, I love the fact that, Leia is a child. She doesn't really understand what's going on in this situation. So, she is putting extra gloves on. She is being a bit, arsey with him a little bit, and Kenobi's trying to hurry her along, but without spooking her, which is, I also like that. He wasn't trying to alarm her or make her upset. He was trying to get her to move along while keeping her calm. And it's not until after Kenobi fights some bounty hunters, essentially at this point, we know that Reva tells, she's arrived on the planet. She tells Flea to put a bounty on Kenobi's head. Flea sort of says, the bounty hunters won't be able to catch him. She says they're not meant to. I just want to squeeze him, and then we'll know where he is. So the bounty goes out, and that's when Kenobi has to shoot a couple of bounty hunters. They have to go on the run. He fights one in a back alley, and that's where Leia finds out that the bounty's on Kenobi, not her, and she starts to worry about the situation. What was your thoughts on that, Jason? Sort of Leia not trusting Obi-Wan, but sort of not trusting the situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was obviously prior to that, like you say, where the bounty went out. So we've obviously again also seen Reva's arguments with the Grand Inquisitor, and we've seen her, very much. She isn't accepted by the rest of the Inquisitors. She is not to their, as far as they're concerned, she's not quite up to their standards yet. And she's clearly got something to prove, and she's determined to prove that she can do this in her own way by flushing out Obi-Wan Kenobi. So obviously then when the bounty goes out, so you've got this sequence now where Leia's suddenly, can I trust him? Is the bounty, or normally anyone who's got a bounty on them, in her mind, is someone that's bad. How can she expect this person to be someone good? So, yeah, it's quite interesting the way her reaction then, obviously, is the flight attitude of she's off and running, and obviously she gives Obi-Wan a run for his money, but at the same time, that obviously brings them to the attention of all of these bounty hunters that are out to get them. And obviously, then there's this brilliant scene where you see how the young boys obviously seen who Obi-Wan is and goes back to Aja, and it's like, damn, we had him, and then, oh well, we could still get him. And you almost think then that there's a double cross coming. So that sets it up nicely that, obviously the odds are stacked against Obi-Wan at this point, and, he's running through the streets and the fight's coming to him.
Yeah, it also leads to that sort of, Obi-Wan ends up chasing Leia out to the rooftops, where we get this awesome rooftop sequence. I think, is that 4-LOM confirmed, Kat?
I think it might be, yes.
It certainly looks like the bounty hunter 4-LOM on the roof who's shooting at them. There's almost a point where Obi-Wan's hiding behind like sort of a shelter while Leia's running ahead, and he's taking cover because he's getting shot at from 2 different rooftops.
That's
then
right.
you get this beautiful shot of Reva. You can see the blaster fire in the distance, and she sets off in sort of a parkour style to reach Obi-Wan. what was your thoughts, Katrin? Obviously, we end up, this chase goes on, and then we end up seeing, Leia ends up falling from a building. And actually, it's almost pottery because we haven't mentioned it, but there's a bit when Leia sees Obi-Wan's lightsaber, she says, "Oh, you a Jedi, make me float. Jedi, make me float." And Obi-Wan's like, "No, it'll draw attention to it." But then we see, Leia falls from the roof, and Kenobi sort of has to reach out to save her, and you can see how sort of not at one with the Force he is. He's quite distant from it. He's able to stop her before she hits the deck and float her down to the ground. And this is the bit where, by doing that act, Leia now trusts him as a Jedi, and she's been taught from her father that the Jedi were good. So that puts Obi-Wan right back in the trust tree. But what were your thoughts, Kat, from this entire sequence, and also the poetry of Obi-Wan making Leia float to make her trust him?
Even though we know that everybody's, or at least Obi-Wan and Leia, are going to be okay in this episode, the stakes were still getting to me watching that, because when Leia's there desperately trying to hold on to stop herself from falling, you can see how much effort it's taking Obi-Wan just to do something that's really simple. If you think about what we've seen during the Clone Wars and during the prequels, grabbing somebody with the Force, that's a very simple thing for a Jedi to do. And it was, the struggle on Obi-Wan's face. He's trying to break down the barriers between him and the Force, barriers he himself has sort of built up to hide. And I thought it was a really sort of poignant way to make Obi-Wan use the Force again, is the fact that it's a life or death situation, and he has no other choice. And then you can see sort of the look of awe on Leia's face as she's saved by Obi-Wan's use of the Force. And she does end up floating. It also reminded me of, I think there's a scene in the Clone Wars where Ahsoka is trying to save Saw Gerrera's sister, Steela, and she's trying to catch her with the Force, and it doesn't work. And this very similar scene, but Obi-Wan does manage to save Leia. So I did notice that parallel as well.
It also reminded me of Rebels when Maul and Ezra are like sending each other through the Sith Temple using the Force, like throwing one and catching the other. Which I know was quite like a dark side thing, but it reminds us of that sort of, that came to mind when I was watching it. Something else as well that we've missed was, when Kenobi was with Leia before Leia ran away, Leia pulled out Lola, who was damaged. And Kenobi sort of said, "Oh, good, I'm glad it's damaged," type of thing. But then did also then sort of backtrack and ask if Lola was, what happened to Lola, and showed a bit of concern for Lola, which I thought was good. Obviously, they end up. I'm trying to think which way things happen. Does Haj bump into Reva or Reva first, or Kenobi first with the location key for the transport?
No, he bumps into Obi-Wan first.
Do you want to talk us through that sequence, Jason, where Kenobi meets Haja to get because obviously the Empire at this point the Empire have shut the spaceport down. The Grand Inquisitor has arrived with the fifth brother, I believe, and also another Inquisitor. And the Grand Inquisitor has killed Flea for working with Reva. And he's trying to shut this operation down now. It's gone too far.
So obviously this is where Haja's appeared, and obviously we've already established, is this a character to trust? And for me as a viewer, I sort of the scene beforehand where we'd seen him rushing off to find Obi-Wan, I was fully expecting a double cross, and yet when we meet him, he clearly wants to help Obi-Wan and Leia, and I think because he's realised that Obi-Wan is a genuine Jedi, it's like, okay, this guy needs to be helped. We need to get him out of here. So obviously we've now sort of gone from this guy being a little bit of a scoundrel to now he's clearly got a purpose on this planet for getting Jedi's or Force sensitive children off of the planet. So yeah, it's quite an interesting. In some ways, I felt maybe they did a quick change with the character, but at the same time, I think the guy who was playing it played it so well that you weren't 100% sure. And likewise, then for when Reaver catches up with him, you're you're there thinking, is he going to double cross them? Which again, was a complete possibility. So you, as the viewer, are torn which way is this going to go. So I like the way that they are playing with us that way. And obviously, then when Leia's clearly realised we're in dire straits here, and she's very much, look, we're just going to trust this guy because we've got no other option. And I think she says it again later on. This is our only option. So again, it's the sort of Leia that we come to know, the pragmatic. She's already showing signs of leadership, which I think is absolutely brilliant. The way they've brought that character to life. And then obviously, I'll let you guys go into the meeting between Haja and Reva because I did actually like the way that went.
I also think that Obi-Wan trusting Haja, though, sets up his character for A New Hope, because there Obi-Wan is going to trust Han. And I think, Raja and Han are sort of cut from the same cloth. They're that scoundrel, but with heart. And I think having Raja be that kind of character will set that up, because Obi-Wan knows that scoundrels aren't necessarily what they appear.
Yeah, I think Harsh has a fantastic line where he talks about, how I made mistakes, how I made cash decisions. Yes. Am I a good guy? Yes. Do I like credits? Yes. You can buy you nice things. So, he sort of admits, yeah, he's a bit, he likes credits. He's made some mistakes maybe, but deep down, he's probably going to do the right thing. Which is what he does. He gives Obi-Wan and Leia, he gives them advice. He has a spaceport shut down, but there's a mining transport that's automatic. It's up on the other upper level transport. He gives them a key card, sort of activation key for the mining transport ship that'll take them off world, away from the Inquisitors and the Empire. We also see him have a big interaction with Reva as well. As he gives Obi-Wan and Leia the key card / activation key for the mining vessel, the trade route. He sort of runs off to cause a distraction as pretending to be a Jedi, essentially, which, on this planet where there's loads of Inquisitors, it's very foolish. He does come across Reva. I'm sort of torn between Reva and Reva. Kat, let's go to you first. Sort of, do you pronounce it Reva? I suppose that's how the fifth brother says it. He's like Reva.
I pronounce it the fifth brother way of Reva, but I've heard people say it both ways. It just depends whether you prefer your E's one way or the other.
Jason, are you a Reva or a Reva?
I like Reva. It makes, for me, it sounds a bit more menacing than Reva.
Yeah, it does. It has that sort of E, like that high pitch E, sort of is quite evil.
Yeah.
Kat, obviously, we see sort of, Haja have an interaction with the third sister, Reva. They come together. I was surprised she didn't kill him, considering the way she chopped someone's hand off in Mos Eisley in the first episode for no reason. But, we do see her use the Force to dive into his mind. Talk us through the difference between, Haja's interaction with Obi-Wan Kenobi just before, and then this interaction with a dark side Force user.
So Haja's interactions with Obi-Wan are very sort of they're quite relaxed and they're very honest. I feel that sort of, Haja does more or less bare his soul to Obi-Wan, because I think Obi-Wan being a Jedi, Haja knows he can innately trust him. But with Reva, he does know this is an Inquisitor, somebody not to be trifled with. And he goes for bravado. When in doubt, always use bravado. And he just spins this wild tale of him being this Jedi with 2 million credits, bounty. You can actually see the confusion written on Reva's face. I don't think she'd ever been confronted like this before. And it's a foolish mix of bravery and stupidity on Raja's part. And then Reva uses the Force on him, much like Darth Maul and Kylo Ren have done, to look into his mind to see where he sent Kenobi. And yeah, you're right, it is quite surprising she didn't kill him. I think the only thing that probably saved Haja is the fact that Reva's distracted. There's blood in the water now. She knows where Obi-Wan is, and she just wants to hunt him down straight away. She doesn't really want the distraction, and she is distracted, and she just doesn't want to be taken off track by having to kill Haja. Which is good, because I want a comic series of Haja swindling the galaxy, please.
Yeah, I suppose there's also there's more fish in the sea now as well. Obviously, the Grand Inquisitor's arrived, some of the Inquisitors have arrived, so she needs to get to Kenobi first. So if she wasted some time here and sort of dealing with the Haja a bit more, cruelly, or killing him, is that the split second or moment where one of the other Inquisitors gets Kenobi first, where we know Reva seems to have a hidden agenda that she needs to get close to Vader for whatever reason, whether it's to become the second in command, to become his apprentice, or to try and kill him, or to ask for freedom, whatever it could be. Her game plan is to get Vader with Vader, and the only way to do it is with Kenobi. So she is sort of in a hurry here now that everyone's arrived and all the attention's been drawn. She sets off to get to the sort of this upper level space terminal, harbour terminal. Jason, let's go to you next. What was your thoughts on sort of, Reva gets to the rooftops, the very top of sort of the spaceport where Kenobi and Leia are hiding. I love the fact that Kenobi sends Leia. He gives her the card key activation and says, "Go, I'll be right behind you." But he's also prepared to sort of, if he dies here, at least Leia gets away type of thing. You can sort of read that in his face.
Yeah, again, it's almost poetic and almost back to A New Hope, because obviously, Obi-Wan went off on his own and never came back that time, but obviously we know this time he's going to come back. I do like, there's still the suspense at this point. You're wondering, is Obi-Wan going to get captured at this point? He's lurking in the shadows, trying to keep away from Reva, and just when you think she's about to get him, obviously, the Grand Inquisitor turns up, and the shock of the entire episode. One, obviously, firstly, before that, Reva's revealed to Obi-Wan that Anakin's still alive, and is now Darth Vader, which at this point seems to be the first time that Obi-Wan's known of Anakin's existence again. But then obviously, so at this point, Obi-Wan's clearly, I don't think he fully knows what to think, and you can see by the look on his face, he's almost frozen like a rabbit in the headlights. And then obviously, the Grand Inquisitor turns up. Clearly, he wants to take control of the situation. He knows what Reva's going to do. And it's the shock where, this character that we were all led to believe is the Grand Inquisitor that we've met before and seen die in Rebels, apparently dies before Rebels. And, I'm trusting from everything I hear, we're going to find out more in the next few episodes as to or the next couple of episodes what actually happened to the Grand Inquisitor and how he's still alive in Rebels when he seems to have met his demise at the hand of Reva. Obviously, this again shows us that this character's not willing to let anything stand in her way, and she's determined to get to be, in Vader's favour. But yeah, the whole thing, the realization on Obi-Wan's face just really was classic acting.
Yeah, I think a few things from me. I think some people were saying, some people said Obi-Wan didn't know that Anakin was Vader, but he learns that in Revenge of the Sith because he sees the security recording of Vader getting taught to rise, I believe, by Sidious in the Jedi Temple after he's attacked it all. So I think, when she says, Lord Vader, I'm going to take you to Lord Vader, that's when Obi-Wan's face starts to drop because he knows Vader is Anakin, and he thought he'd killed Vader, thought he'd killed Anakin, left him to die. Then she puts the extra bit in by saying Anakin Skywalker is alive because she can sense in Obi-Wan, I believe, she can sense it through the Force that Obi-Wan's quite distraught when she says, Lord Vader's waiting for you. So then she puts another little dagger in, a verbal dagger of Anakin Skywalker is alive. And I think with the Grand Inquisitor, he turns up to take the kill, essentially, to take the bounty. And Reva's like, no way, I've done the hard work. Stabs him through the stomach with the lightsaber. Now, I'm sure, are they what they call pounds, is that right?
That's the one.
So don't they have two stomachs?
They do indeed.
Well, hey. So I know I've seen everybody going, they've killed Cannon. I'm like, well, if anything, in the new trilogy, right, we've seen Kylo Ren take the bowcaster shot to the mid range and survive. We've seen Kylo Ren get stabbed through the middle and survive. We've seen
Fennec
Shand, yeah, survive a 5-day gut shot, or however long she was in the desert for. So I think,
fat.
yeah. So I just think I don't think he's dead at all. I think something that comes apart in the next episode is that to get out of it, Reva tells Vader that the Inquisitor, Obi-Wan killed the Inquisitor. Another thing, I just want to talk about this sequence. Obviously, the sort of the tragic of Obi-Wan's face when she mentions the word Vader and that he's waiting. And then even more when she then mentions, puts the dig in about being Anakin Skywalker. I think Obi-Wan pulls his lightsaber out during this sequence, but the way he's holding it, you can tell he's not in a position where he's ready to do a lightsaber battle.
Yeah.
And I think that's on purpose. What were your thoughts about sort of Reva just casually mentioned that it's Anakin Skywalker? I think, as we've discussed before, I think, not many people knew who Vader's true identity was, and those who did probably didn't mention it much. Tarkin says he pretty much figured it out, but again, only thought about it privately and never mentioned it because where would that get you? Nowhere. I think Thrawn knows, but again, how much does he go out blabbing his mouth? Doesn't. So Reva knows somehow where maybe the other Inquisitors don't. But just, happy to use this fact here when she knows it's going to cause Obi-Wan a bit more turmoil. Obviously, Obi-Wan's able to escape, due to the Inquisitor sort of inward fighting each other. He manages to board the ship with Leia. It takes off, and, just as the third sister Reva gets there. Kat, what were your thoughts on the final sequence and, Reva's words to Obi-Wan and also Reva's interaction with the Grand Inquisitor?
I thought, I mean, I really do love Reva's character, and I thought the way she sort of, delivered that line was a huge shock because it raises the massive question, well, how does she know that Vader is Anakin? I mean, that was a very closely guarded secret in the Empire. So for her to just sort of, stab Obi-Wan with that information, it just raises so many questions. We have so many questions about her character. I will admit, I was not a fan of her stabbing the Grand Inquisitor, only because I feel that so-called death in the Star Wars galaxy is becoming like the Marvel multiverse. Nobody is gone. You're going to come back at some point by some technology or some miracle cure. And I just feel that it's taking away some of the gravitas, because we know the Grand Inquisitor is going to be fine. I just don't understand why they had to make it seem like that. But that's just my thought on the story. I loved everything before that moment, and I loved everything after that moment. And I think all the interactions between Obi-Wan and Reva were just so intense, and show sort of how far he's fallen, because he is hiding, and Obi-Wan never used to hide. This is the general who took on General Grievous jumping down from a ceiling. But yeah, I just wasn't a fan of her casually stabbing the Grand Inquisitor.
I wonder if it was sort of like her final move, because there's no going back now. So like, if the Grand Inquisitor does return, Vader's going to find out the truth, and like he will stop nothing to destroy Reva. Like he will torture her and destroy her. So I feel like it was maybe in that moment it was like it's all or nothing at this point. If I capture Kenobi here, even if he survives, it wouldn't matter. Or if he's dead, no one will care. Or Vader won't care. So maybe that moment was like all or nothing here. Like, I've worked so hard to get this point. That's why I believe it's something deeper. Like the reason why she wants Vader's favor, it's something really deep. I think we're going to hopefully learn that in the next two episodes, like the last two episodes. But yeah, I think I don't think he's dead. I think he'll be coming back.
I'm still holding out for Jason Isaacs to appear as the real Grand Inquisitor.
I just don't know why you'd have a dummy Inquisitor. That is very Marvel, like multiverse bullshit. Do you know what I mean? Like,
True.
do you know what I mean? I think they've cast who they've cast. I don't think he's dead, because I don't know why you would go against that whole story arc in Rebels when you don't need to. You don't need to kill him necessarily, but I think having Reva attempt to kill him and think she has says a lot about what she's willing to do to get this favour with Vader, because not only will the Grand Inquisitor be hunting her now once he gets back up and running, but Vader, like I said, could torture and kill her, and she also misses that on Kenobi here as well. This brings an end to the episode, as sort of the ship taking off and them escaping. I just thought, for me, the whole episode was quite fast paced. I like the hunt of it. Kenobi hunting Leia, then the Empire hunting Obi-Wan and Leia, and then the very dramatic and tragic sort of slow down at the end when Reva's giving it the big licks and really torturing Obi-Wan with her words. Obi-Wan learns Anakin's still alive, which is horrible for him. Because not just because it's horrible for him, but he's also he's trying to save Anakin's daughter from this person who's seen Anakin's alive, who wants him. So it's very deep and very tragic. Jason, what were your closing thoughts on this episode before we move on to part 3?
We've got to talk about that final shot as well, because it's obviously Anakin, and it is very much Anakin that we see in the Bacta tank, isn't it? At the end of it.
Yes, I believe so.
So it's like that shot when you see Hayden Christensen's battle scarred face, and I think that was the perfect ending for that episode, and to all intents and purposes, that it would almost appear like Kenobi is a 3-act play, and each 2 episodes are an act in themselves. So obviously we've had the first act, which is the establishing act, and then we've now established the fact that Vader's coming for Obi-Wan Kenobi, ready to move us on to the middle act, which we will start discussing in a minute. And I think it's very cleverly done. And I think these 2 episodes, my certain feeling is the first 2 episodes I viewed together, one after the other, and it's one story for me. And I just think they've done it very, very well.
Kat, have you got any closing thoughts about part 2?
Yeah, I totally agree with Hondo about the 2 episodes. To me, just feel like one big movie. Um, and I don't know, there's something about this series and the way the episodes are linking to me that feels much more cinematic than even The Mandalorian or The Book of Boba Fett. And I think that's greatly helped actually by Natalie Holt's music for this series. There's just something so sweeping. It feels just like a really big Star Wars movie.
Certainly. I like how this sort of, the first episode was quite welcoming us back into Obi-Wan Kenobi's life and life on Tatooine. And I loved the first episode, and it took its time to sort of show his situation. And then this episode was very much like, bang, you're back in adventure here. How do you deal with it? And we learned a lot about Obi-Wan, about how he dealt with, the thugs in the Spice Den, how he dealt with the competition with Reva, sorry. How he saved Leia, how he ultimately, looked very sad and distraught when he found out the truth about Anakin. And then I thought the ending was, again, beautiful. Hondo, I think, looking at Anakin's face in the back of the tank, I believe it sort of cuts it with Obi-Wan's face on the transport, sort of realizing that he's alive. It's very, very, very tragic. Which brings us to part 3, the second episode we're going to be reviewing in this episode of Star Wars. Let's start with you. The episode begins with sort of Obi-Wan on the transport, and I believe he's sort of trying to speak to Qui-Gon. He also fixes Leia's droid here as well. A little kind act to Anakin's daughter here, which it sort of all ties. He's just learned Anakin's alive, and he's alive in the worst thing ever, and then he sort of does a kind act to Anakin's daughter here. What was your thoughts on sort of the opening sequence of the episode, Kat, and sort of the arrival on the planet?
I thought actually that Obi-Wan fixing Lola, it just had this sort of really deep meaning for me because he's just learned that Anakin is alive, and the one thing Anakin loved doing was tinkering with parts, making droids, building things, and the first thing that Obi-Wan does is fix Lola. And I think that's because he is trying to sort of reach this connection to Anakin. So he takes out, because Obi-Wan isn't really much one for sort of mechanics and tools and parts. That was never his thing. He was always sort of the diplomat. So for him to be doing that, I think, is sort of his way to try to connect to Anakin. And at the same time, then, it's this very kind act for Leia, another way for him to sort of give an olive branch to Leia that, you can trust me, and, here's Lola back. So it was this very quiet scene, which I think was needed after that really astounding finale from episode 2. I think we did need this quiet moment with Obi-Wan as we all process with him this big realization for him that Anakin's alive, and the way he does that is through fixing Lola. So it's a way for him to basically meditate as a Jedi, but with the parts of this little droid. It was beautifully done, and there's just so much that you can unpack just in that one little scene that is just so Star Wars.
I like it when they land, when we see them sort of sneak off the ship, trying to avoid the power lifter droid. It was very much reminiscent to me of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon sneaking aboard the droid landing ships in the Phantom Menace. And also, Han and Luke and hiding in the compartments of the Millennium Falcon and New Hope as well. And then, of course, also in The Force Awakens, the gang hiding in the compartments when Han finds them. Obviously, we get a sort of a really, again, a tragic sort of moment where, they're on the planet and they're walking. Obi-Wan looks out across sort of the plains and sees Anakin Skywalker as is Revenge of the Sith. And he's starting to see hallucinations of his best friend, of his brother. Again, another tragic moment shot here. Kat, what's the name of this planet we are on now?
The mining planet. I'm not actually quite sure. I have to take a look. They're on Mapuzo.
I like how Kenobi sort of Makuzo. I like the fact Kenobi talks about how it was a mining world and it was flourishing, but now the Empire sort of mined it bare and took control, type of thing. And that's why there's less people on the planet. I like the fact, they get to the coordinates that, Haja sent them. We've actually learned that Haja is a bigger part of something called the Path. That he wasn't maybe just a chancer who we met before. But they get these coordinates and no one's there, and Kenobi's very nervous, as you would be. You've just learned that Anakin's alive. You've just literally escaped by the skin of your teeth last episode. So they decide to move on, and they come across a transport ship, transport speeder even. Is he called Freck?
Yep.
Freck, this mole type creature who lets them jump on board. He seems very friendly. He then also lets some Imperials get on board, some stormtroopers who are lost out in the desert. And a couple of things about the scene. I love the way when Obi-Wan goes to get on the back of the speeder. It's got the sort of the hand painted flag of the Imperial logo on, and he sort of stops for a second. And to me, that's almost like post-traumatic stress disorder for Obi-Wan. He's a bit like, this could be very dangerous for me getting on board this. Do I really want to do this? But he also doesn't have a choice. So I like that sort of pause. It was only a moment, but it was a moment that meant a lot. And they certainly got that across in the show. And the board and these stormtroopers are there, and, I think, even if you can't tell, Obi-Wan and Leia have sort of the disguise planned, and they're telling this story, and it's very, very tragic, actually, the way it goes, and also they nearly get caught out as well. But, I'll let you tell the story about why it's so beautiful.
This is a truly standout scene from this whole episode. And I think it actually beats awkward elevator rides. Forget that. We've got the awkward transport ride, and you can see how stiff Obi-Wan is. These stormtroopers are literally sitting right next to him. And what I really love was how Leia takes charge. I think there's this undercurrent throughout almost every episode that Leia is actually subconsciously using the Force as an empath. She's picking up on people's emotions in particular. And I think she can feel how nervous Obi-Wan is. And so she steps in to save them. She provides them with different names and a fantastic cover story. And she's such a she's acting for these stormtroopers, and it's brilliant. It also ties in so well with a scene from Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, where Tarkin comes to Alderaan, and he's very suspicious of Breca and Bale, and he's trying to see if they are leading the rebellion. He's trying to get dirt on them, and in that scene, Leia distracts Tarkin through her acting and through creating a cover story for them. So I thought that was sort of a brilliant tie-in, that Leia's been doing this for so long. And it seems to be working. Everything seems to be okay, even though it's very tense. And then Obi-Wan slips up. He calls Leia by her real name rather than calling her by the pseudonym she's taken on. And the stormtroopers immediately, you can see they're very suspicious. And then thankfully he manages to save the day by this most poignant line of saying, "When I look at her, I see her mother." And you can feel Obi-Wan's regret over Padme. and what he's saying is the truth, and that's what saves him, is the fact that Obi-Wan isn't lying to these stormtroopers. He's telling the truth, because in Leia he can see the leader that Padme was, and he's already seen the leader that Leia's becoming.
Definitely, and I also think that Leia can feel that, like she can feel that truth coming from Obi-Wan. I think Leia at this point is using sort of the Force subconsciously. I think what leads to Leia asking the question later, "Are you my real father?" Because she felt that realism from Obi-Wan at the moment. That appears to get them free of the doubt of the stormtroopers. But what we find is that this Freck, who was voiced by Zach Braff, I believe, goes and tells the Imperials at the checkpoint to check them out. Something's not right with them, and it's weird because he's like a mole species, and he certainly is an Imperial mole, isn't he?
Definitely, I love that. He's was it a star-snouted mole? I can't quite remember the specific mole, but yeah, he's a mole who's literally a mole. Love the costume design.
Jason, what was your thoughts on what happens next? At the checkpoint where Kenobi has to take action.
Well, I've got to say, I did enjoy the character of Freck. I was a bit of a fan of Zach Brass from his days on Scrubs, and obviously he's already linked to Star Wars in some ways because obviously he co-starred with Donald Faison, who did the voice for Resistance, and I believe Zach Braff's partner Florence Pugh's also been cast in, I think it's the Ahsoka series. So he's obviously got himself in there somehow to get this part. And I know I've seen him in costume, and he clearly enjoyed every second of it. Obviously, one thing we haven't mentioned it prior to all of this, we've also had the scene where we see Vader for the first time in all his glory, and again voiced by James L. Jones, obviously giving Reva her instructions. But yeah, obviously what happens at the checkpoint for me is Obi-Wan really letting loose for the first time, um, and obviously taking down these Imperials quite dramatically. But obviously I've seen a few memes, obviously with the stormtrooper that falls and gets sliced in half, and I think there was a picture of Ewan McGregor in. Oh, that's going to come back and haunt me in a few years' time. So lovely little tribute to Darth Maul there, and then obviously you think. Great, they've got past this, and then you see the Imperial transport coming towards them, and the stormtroopers march off. And when we see this Imperial officer, I have to say I thought the casting here was brilliant, because I've always loved. And I'm gonna make sure I say this as right as I can do. I think it's Indira Varma. I loved her from her days. Yeah, Indira Varma from when she was in Game of Thrones, and normally she plays quite an evil, manipulative sort of character. So to see her at this first point where you think, oh, she's going to be a real evil Imperial officer, I think what they've played there is, the audience have been played perfectly there for a very different character for what we were expecting her to be.
Yeah, definitely. I love the fact, the probe droids hovering and Kenobi sort of, he pulls that gun like a Wild West Star. When he gets off the transport, he flips
Yeah.
the hatch on his blaster axe. He knows he doesn't have to use it. He shoots the probe droid, shoots the troops. It's a bit hand-to-hand combat. The troops come off the transport, and you think they've got them, but then, as we know, this character's here to help. She was originally meant to meet them at the rendezvous point where they were waiting originally, but she was running late. But she's caught up with them here. Kat, what your thoughts on the introduction of this new character?
I think Tala is such a refreshing character in the Star Wars universe because for a long time, perhaps not necessarily in the books and comics, but certainly on screen, when you see an Imperial officer, you immediately think bad guy, villain, or you just think, and you immediately think that they're stereotyped because they're Imperial officers or they're stormtroopers or whatever way they serve the Empire. But Tala, I think, is showing this human side to the Empire. The Empire is made up of people. They are humans, and they're not necessarily happy about the regime they're serving. So Tala's using her stance within the Empire to be able to do some good. So for her to be risking everything, she is a traitor to be helping people along the path, is such an amazing view of those within the Empire. They're not all bad. They're just human, and I think that's a fantastic piece of writing. And I loved how it went from you think it's going to be a bad moment because she turns up, but then she's actually there to save Obi-Wan and Leia. So it was a fantastic reveal.
It certainly wasn't. While this reveal's happening, we're also getting a bit more reveal at Fortress Inquisitus, where Reva's been sort of put in command of fighting Kenobi after the disappearance of Grand Inquisitor. Fifth brother takes offense to this. He's like, I'm next in line. Which he says, it's Lord Vader's orders directly, so he sort of, he takes a step back. She says, send the probes out, and they get a hit off this attack that Kenobi has with the probe droid and the Imperials, and Vader and the Inquisitors are now on their way to this planet. While this is happening, Tala is showing Obi-Wan and Leia the path, which is essentially not the rebellion, but it seems to be sort of an underground movement of hiding Force-sensitive children and traveling Force-sensitive children, enemies of the Empire, away from them. We learn a bit about powerlifter droids, where they don't, like loader droids, where, they apparently don't understand things and they just have one purpose, but we learn this one is a good guy, so I might not say much, but its actions will speak louder than words. And they sneak off into a sort of a back room, which is where Kenobi finds some really cool things. Do you want to start us off, Jason, with what Kenobi finds written on the walls in this secret hideout for the path?
I've got to remember this now. Obviously, the main thing is obviously the reveal that Quinlan Voss has been here, who is a character that obviously everyone knows from Star Wars. I think he appeared in Clone Wars, and obviously he's appeared in a lot of the novelizations, and is a very popular character, and has often been rumored to be appearing in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whether that will happen, who's to know? But obviously, and obviously there's all these other rebellion or rebels symbols. I think there's the classic symbol of the rebellion emblem that we see. I think he actually takes a piece from the wall or something. It's one of these scenes that I've sort of watched it so many times. I've sort of tried to pick out everything and didn't do very well at this. One for that's normally Cat. So, but yeah, this whole revelation that there's this secret underground train, almost like they used to be in the slavery days and stuff like that. It's it's a nice way of seeing how the rebellion's going to grow from you know the early days here to what we see later on in Rebels and then in New Hope and so on. But no, I think also this will probably lead quite nicely into what we're going to see later on in the year when Andor comes out. And obviously we'll see more of the rebellion growing there. Um, but all in all, yeah, this sets it up with the characters, and the idea of the path is quite an interesting one to bring in.
definitely. I think if you read Dark Disciple, when you watch Clone Wars, and that Quinlan and Obi-Wan are more than just Jedi's acquaintances. There is a deeper friendship there, and he probably was one of the Jedi's Obi-Wan's more closest to.
Yeah.
So I think with that reveal of Quinlan's name, I think was really cool. It does tease, are we going to get him in this series? Are we not? We'll find out. But it's good to know he's still about at this point. I'm sure they've teased this in comics as well, with list of Jedi names not found dead yet, and I'm sure Quinlan Vos was in there as well. So again, nice little sort of call back to the comics. I believe as well there's a quote about the Force on the wall, Cat, which reminded me a little bit about the High Republic, and I believe there's a Jedi logo on there as well, which is a bit more High Republic vibe-ish.
Yes, you've got the symbol of the Jedi Order with its lightsaber and the two spearing wings on either side. That's the piece that Reva will eventually take. But yes, you've also got in Aurebesh, you have "For Light and Life" written into the wall, which is the classic saying that all High Republic fans have. A couple of other things on the wall is we've got some names, such as Corran Horn and Valen Halcyon. These are Jedi from the Legends. There's also a really deep shout out. This is really unusual. The Roganda Ismaran has been also graffitied onto the wall, and she was a consort to Emperor Palpatine. So there's some really deep dives on that wall, and definitely take a look at the screenshots. Definitely check out the YouTubers who have been figuring it all out, because there's Easter eggs aplenty just on those 4 walls.
Yes, I think it definitely needs a rewatch and a looking at the screenshots. Jason, while this is happening, we then have this sort of Vader arrives with the Inquisitors. What did you make of Vader's arrival and sort of how tense the street gets with all of that?
Oh, this was the Vader that we all wanted to see. This was the Vader as well that we'd sort of seen in Rogue One, very much at the height of his power, but he had no interest in. First, he wanted to display to everyone that he needed to be feared. So we see him, and I think also he was trying to possibly draw Obi-Wan out with the idea, obviously, that the Jedi need to be able to help. So obviously we see him. I think he kills one of the villagers, and as he's there, and then obviously he marches on, and Reva clearly wants to go to town as per usual. But she's told no, we're only to search basically. But obviously, it's always gonna. Reva seems to always be one step ahead of all the others, no matter what she's doing. Even when she's actually following orders, she's still one step ahead of all the others. So obviously, whereas they're just doing a standard sort of search, it's almost like she reaches out with the Force to sense where she needs to look, and which to me, I think is alluding to the fact that there's something a little bit special about Reva in comparison to the rest, even though they treat her with disdain.
Yeah, I think we, Kenobi, Obi-Wan, and Tala, they're in this place. Troopers come in to actually search the place, and the power droids, plays dumb. They end up leaving, but the power droid has a hammer behind its back as well, so it was really cool. So it was prepared to defend them. They just Tala tells me, we're going to get you out on the transport. Let's get ready to go. But then we have Obi-Wan senses Anakin's arrival very strongly. It almost, I wouldn't say it gives him a heart attack, but he almost has a moment where he's stuck still and you can't breathe. It's almost like a stroke. It's quite an intense feeling in that moment. It's almost a few moments. He goes to the door, and that's when Vader starts walking down the center of the street. He pulls a man out the window and holds him up, just choking him to death. And as he's doing that, he snaps that man's own son's neck. and then kills the man, and the wife comes out to sort of look at her dead son, a dead husband, which is very, very tragic. He pulls another one through the street and chokes to death. All to sort of again spread terror, but also I think to really try and draw Obi-Wan out. I agree, but also I think to really hurt Obi-Wan, to like this is what I do now. You call me a brother, but this is what I do now. Again, just sort of trying to add that final insult. I think to really sort of try and destroy Obi-Wan mentally is what I think he's trying to do there. Obi-Wan sort of goes on the run, trying to draw him away from the village, not just to save the villagers, but also away from Leia. And then Reva, I think you're right, Kat sort of does have a inkling or sort of a sensation and is able to follow the Force through into the Path hideout. And, she basically gets ahead of Leia, kills the pilot, and then takes Leia captive. And does take that Jedi logo off the cave wall, which, I've got a feeling that she was a Jedi. I don't think she turned straight away. I think they found her later. That's why there's a bit of distrust there, and they call her worse than the gutter. I think there's something going on. Obi-Wan goes on the run, and there's sort of this cat and mouse chase through the darkness, which is very scary, very tense, very emotional. Kat, do you want to talk us through Vader and Obi-Wan sort of dancing in the dark, dancing in the pale moonlight, a little bit of a scrap, then running away, and then obviously one final scrap with the fire?
This was what fans have been waiting for. The moment where Obi-Wan has to face Vader. And the way the cinematography was done was some of the best Star Wars. And there was just this such juxtaposition. So Obi-Wan is running away from the village, away from Leia and Tala, to protect them because he knows that Vader's only really after him. But Vader isn't running. He's just sort of calmly pacing after Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's, searching around madly to try and see where Vader is. And I think, that was done to show Vader can't run anymore. After what Obi-Wan did to him, he can't run anymore. He is limited to that strong walking pace, but nothing more. And this is then the first clash we get between the two of them. Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber to fight Vader, and Vader wipes the floor with him. Obi-Wan has been out of practice for 10 years. He's not fought with that lightsaber, and it shows. He's having to use both hands to desperately hold on to his lightsaber, whereas Vader is one-handed, just absolutely hitting Obi-Wan again and again and again. And you can almost see that were it not for Vader sort of, I think, holding back slightly, it would be quite easy for him to take down Obi-Wan at this point. But he doesn't want to do it that way. He doesn't want to do it as like quick and easy as a lightsaber battle. And they end up next to this, I think it's like some kind of flammable mineral that's being mined on the Puzo, which Vader sets alight, and he drags Obi-Wan into it. And this was such a parallel to Revenge of the Sith, such a deliberate parallel, because Vader's been thinking about this for a very, very long time. He was literally died and reborn in the flames, and he wants to do the same to Obi-Wan. It's something we've seen Vader sort of daydreaming about in the comics, and one of the most clever yet subtle parts of this is that when Obi-Wan is screaming in the flames, if you actually look at Vader's lenses, you can actually see it's their dual on Mustafar that's actually being reflected rather than Obi-Wan. It's actually a screenshot straight from episode 3, which is really clever reference. And Obi-Wan's sort of, asking, what have you become? and Vader says, "What you have made me." And what I thought was absolute genius about this scene is the fact that they layered Hayden Christensen's voice with James Earl Jones's voice. And when he says that, it just hits you straight away. This is Anakin talking to Obi-Wan. And oh my gosh. It was a literal burn and it was a figurative burn all at the same time.
Definitely. And I also point out, like, the Sid's weakness, where it's like, he's going to blame Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan did put him in this suit, but really, Anakin's decision-making is what made him Darth Vader. And you can blame Obi-Wan all you want and put all that hate on that, but that's not true, really. And I think, you put yourself there, but you're going to say it's Obi-Wan to give you something to fight. Some of the things I loved what you say about Obi-Wan, not being ready. I think Obi-Wan, you're right, out of practice with the lightsaber for so long. So, the lightsaber's been buried in the desert for a long time. But also, I think, not just out of practice with the lightsaber, but also not prepared mentally to fight Anakin and fight Vader, and the emotion and the drama of the scenario is also there. I think he's in shock, which also doesn't help. Vader's obviously, I love, you're right, that sort of burning comment, I am what you made me, was very, very, very cutting. And I think, the way Vader, after he sets fire to the minerals, he's choking Obi-Wan in the air, and that was very similar to me of when Anakin chokes Padme on Mustafar before Obi-Wan comes out the speeder. So that was a bit of Star Wars poetry there. It took me right back to that scene where he's choking Padme, and then obviously then he drags Obi-Wan into the fire, which is reminiscent of what happened to him when he got set on fire. And then luckily for Obi-Wan, Leia had sent Tala to get him, and she's able to sort of put the fire out and be trying to put the fire out. She's able to. Vader puts the fire out and asks the troopers to bring him towards him, and she's able to snipe some of the troops away, set the thing back on fire, and then the power droid's able to go in. The power lifter droid's able to go in and get Obi-Wan and rescue him. What were your thoughts, Jason, on the end of this episode and sort of the ending of episode 3, part 3?
Yeah, no, this was classic. It was brutal to see the way Vader dragged Obi-Wan in, and straight away it was like you knew that this was him saying, "Okay, you've done it to me. This is what I'm going to do to you." And obviously, we know that he wasn't going to kill Obi-Wan. That's the one thing this whole series has against it, is that we know that Obi-Wan is going to survive it. So obviously there's the danger side of it, but we know he's going to get out of it somehow. And the rescue, Tala's way she rescues him is brilliant. And you see Vader cut off by the flames, so he can't get to Obi-Wan. But although I did sort of feel that when he was looking at the droid, I felt Vader could have quite easily stopped the droid from saving Obi-Wan. But I felt that he thought, no, there will be another time. I know you're still about. I'm going to catch up with you again. So there was that sort of feeling. And obviously, we know that he's off to be rescued. He's been rescued. So we've got episode 4 to look forward to, and find out obviously how he's now going to have to rescue that young princess again. Seems to be his lot in life.
Yeah, I think something else. Well, obviously, when Obi-Wan's sort of rescued. Remember, there's still good in Anakin, and Anakin might not know it right now, but I bet there's a part of Anakin looking across there where he's thinking, the memories are probably flooding back to him of the Clone Wars, of Obi-Wan being a father figure, a brother figure, a mentor figure. So I bet there's that playing on Anakin's mind, on Vader's mind as well. Behind the mask, maybe not as much as it does later with Luke, but there will be a slight thing in there. I think that's why sort of maybe there's that pause there. you don't just turn good overnight. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there deep down. So maybe there's that where in that moment, something's come between them to stop him from finishing him off, and he sort of takes a breath, and maybe he's thinking, not even thinking, but subconsciously, just maybe reliving some moments of their friendship and their lives together in the past. In what could have been,
Yeah,
maybe.
I agree there, because he could have just used the Force to wipe out the flames again after Tala sets them up, but he doesn't. I think, yeah, you're right. He definitely does let Obi-Wan go.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think he lets him go on purpose. A decision. I think he's caught him in the moment, and he doesn't make a decision. Almost like he's paused in that moment. His thoughts are somewhere else, thinking of something else. The past, everything between him and Obi-Wan, and then as he comes to his senses out of his daydream, almost, you could say. It's a bit like it's the moment's already passed. You could say. Obviously, while all this is going down, as I said, Leia was left alone to get to the transport, and Rivas got to the transport, killed the pilot, and captured Leia. And that takes us into episode 4, which is going to be a rescue mission, which we'll review on a later episode of the podcast. Kat, just any closing thoughts on this episode, on part 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
It's been my favorite episode so far. Everything about this episode was just so well done, and seeing Obi-Wan and Vader, Anakin again like that was just absolutely incredible. None of us were expecting it, and I was quite uncertain about sort of Vader and Obi-Wan having this rematch, but all my fears were unjustified, because this episode was just for me, it only enhances Revenge of the Sith.
Definitely. I think for me it was very horror vibe-ish, especially the way, we knew Vader was going to cut loose, but maybe not. I mean, it was done subtly, but it was very, very in your face, vicious as well. The way, he's choking that dad in the air and then snaps the child's neck, and then, his battle with Obi-Wan and the way he tries to burn him alive. It was very horror-esque, but done sort of in a magnificent way. I think obviously this is part 1 of the rematch. I think Obi-Wan and Vader will definitely fight again, hopefully in the finale. But yeah, I love the terror that came from Vader being here on this planet in this scene. Not just the terror he put out to the villagers, but the terror he gave Obi-Wan. And I don't mean that in a way I loved it as in I loved it because I love terror. I loved it as a storytelling tool where, Anakin is very far gone, and this is the reason why Obi-Wan probably believes that he's lost, and that he's fully dark, and that the only hope is Luke. Is because of what Vader's doing here. It makes sense storyline wise, and we get to see that. And it's also tragic because we've seen Anakin be the good guy and save the day so many times, and here he is, being a murderer. And it's sad to see. Once you go too far, can you ever really come back? And it's the biggest question of humanity, really. That's sort of being asked of this. So yeah, Jason, your final thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, I just think it ended us, again, for me, this is the mid part of the second act. And, episode 4 is going to be the concluding part of that, which I'm looking forward to diving into and discussing, with all the fun that comes with that. But we've certainly now seen Vader at his strongest, or we've now seen the Vader that we were hoping we'd see all those years ago, where we see him truly able to, and at this point, you feel that Vader is stronger than Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's a real force to be reckoned with. Obviously, when they last met, Obi-Wan had the high ground. But I think this time Vader was very much in the position to take control. So obviously now, he's something that Obi-Wan's going to be very wary of.
Definitely. Kat, any closing thoughts on the series so far?
It's just every cliffhanger that these episodes are ending on is just making me so excited for every Wednesday. Like even more excited than The Mandalorian. There is something about this series. I think it's the fact that these characters are so personal. We know Anakin's journey, we know Obi-Wan's journey, and seeing more of that journey is just it's getting me so excited, and I'm just loving having this part of their characterization explored more.
Definitely. I think that's, I think I've said everything I want to say about the episode so far. I'm excited to talk about episode 4 and to watch episodes 5 and 6 when they come out. I think the series has been fantastic so far. It's dived on the emotions, on the tragedy so well. The action sequence has been great. It's been shot beautifully. We've got some really good characters, some characterization from Vader, Anakin, from Obi-Wan, from Leia, from Reva. Some really, really good stuff. I'm excited to see where it goes. Changing the topic a little bit, but it's also on topic. Have you seen the new HasLab backed project, Kat?
No, I didn't even know HasLab had one.
It's up now. It is Reva's lightsaber.
The only thing I've seen is the Lego set to tie in with this episode.
So Reva's lightsaber is available on HasLab. To you've got to back it to get it. No stretch goals have been revealed yet, and I'm sort of tempted just to do it because I've still got FOMO from the Rancor.
Yeah, I'm wondering what is gonna have as the stretch goals.
Hopefully, like the cape and that's like cool Sith droids. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe are they gonna have the Grand Inquisitor's intestines to go round the saber?
Maybe it could come with a piece of the wall with that Jedi logo on.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I hope
Yeah, that
Hasbro
would be
listen to
really
this
nice.
show.
Well, don't listen to me because they just do stupid stuff and then don't take me money.
You really haven't got over that, have you, Pete?
Well, yeah, I just wanted a Rancor. Did I even really want a Rancor in the beginning? Probably not, but I just got caught up in it. And then I was going to get one, and then I wasn't allowed one, so it's just like... It is what it is. But I think I haven't backed it yet, but I think I'm going to back the Saber just because it'll be cool to back it and to see what's like.
What's the price?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's in between £400 and £500.
Oh, I could get a few lightsabers for that price.
But it comes with obviously at the minute we've seen Reva wield it with like a half guard. That makes sense. Like it's got half a ring. It comes with a half guard and a full guard configuration.
All right.
And I don't know if you noticed, but in the Black Series figure of Reva, it comes with both. So at some point she's going to switch sabers, or maybe it folds out to create the spinning one. Or maybe it's just for the toy. You don't know, I suppose.
Yeah. Another marketing ploy.
Well, one of those things, the original Bib Fortuna figure, came with a staff he never had, but then they brought the staff back for Book of Boba Fett, so these things do come around.
Because they got the Kylo Ren lightsaber wrong to begin with. If you look at some of the really early Hasbro figures of him, like the crossguard piece of the lightsaber, apparently if you look at the pictures of these toys, it feeds into like the main blade, which it doesn't in the films.
I think that was just a design choice because I've seen that. I think it was just a way of having instead of having 3 blades I plug into it, it's a way to have that as one piece of plastic, which is cheaper than mold, I think, and it fits in as one, if you know what I mean. Possibly, but I do watch a lot of show about toys, so maybe it's to do with the machine of the parts and how they fit in. But I've definitely seen that on the Saber. You're 100% right, Kat, with that design. But But I think that brings an end to Kenobi so far. Any closing thoughts to finish the episode off, Jason?
No, I would like to go back to that Lego kit that Kat mentioned. Yeah, I'm not taken with that. I think it's a chance to sell minifigures rather than anything.
Now you see, I'll
Is
buy
this
it for
the
minifigures.
Yeah,
is this the
exactly.
June set?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen the set. I was a bit like the actual background looks a bit rubbish, but the figures look good. But did you see the Inquisitor set where you get like all the Inquisitors in one set?
No, haven't seen that yet.
Is it not the transport ship or something? Something like that?
Yeah, you get all
Oh,
the.
yes, that would be. Yeah.
You get like Grand
Oh,
Inquisitor, Reva. You get all of them in one set. It looks class.
oh, I might have to get that one then.
So, but I think it's like the attack. It's their shuttle, I think. So, if I'm not mistaken, so it'll
Yeah.
probably be a bit pricey, but it's very rare they give you all them in one set. That's what I thought.
Well, that's what I was surprised with the Bad Batch set. The only one that was missing from that was Omega. All of the rest of the Bad Batch were there and present.
Yeah, sort of good. You
That
know, the price of these things are only going up, but at least they give them some value there, I suppose.
Yeah, Lego's due to go up even more expensive by the end of the year, isn't it, Kat?
It is. There's going to be price increases of up to a third on sets. So if you're looking to get one, get them now.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice to end on. Kat, any closing thoughts on the episode about anything Kenobi or anything Star Wars?
I'm trying to think. Do I know any cool Easter eggs from this episode? I think I've mentioned them. But I'm definitely intrigued to see what Reva's connection to the Jedi Order was, because she's quite angry when she sees that symbol in the safe house, and you can see it's personal to her. So I've just got so many questions about her character.
Yeah, I've had I don't know if I think this now, but I had a thought, when I was watching the show so far, where, maybe she was a Padawan that went on the run, a youngling who went on the run. I think she's probably that youngling at the beginning, part of that crew. She goes on the run. I think she's somehow been found as sort of an adult, late teenager, became an Inquisitor. I think maybe she hates that. And I don't know, my gut feeling is that she's going to get Kenobi for Vader to then ask for our freedom from the Empire.
I saw this really interesting theory that Reva hates Obi-Wan because, if you remember, the message from the temple was for the Jedi to return, so so Order 66 would be easy to carry out. But Obi-Wan was the one to change it, to warn all the Jedi away, which meant that Obi-Wan stopped anybody from coming back to rescue the Padawans. So it could be like something seriously personal to her like that, in that she blames Obi-Wan in a very sort of dark side way for the fact that she wasn't rescued and for the fact that now she's part of the Empire.
That's a very good one as well. I think it's going to be deep. It's going to be something like what we've discussed there. Hopefully, it's going to be really, really good. Jason, where can the people find you on social media?
Oh, you always do this to me. It's at Hondo Ling or obviously at Jason Ling Photography.
And Kat, where can the lovely people find you on social media?
You can find me at Kat Kylo on Twitter. Always happy to talk Star Wars.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can also find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star. And you can also find the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Star Wars Podcast. If you listen to us on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, those all have a rating system. So, if you've got time, please leave us a 5-star review, a top review. Leave a little comment, nice little comment. It just helps so that people find the show, moves us up the listings a little bit, and helps us book guests on the show as well. If you're listening on a different type of podcast app, whether it's Radio Republic or Listen Notes or whatever it could be, there's a lot out there. And there's a similar rating system on there. Again, please consider leaving us a top review, nice little comment. Again, just helps people find the show. But yeah, no, thank you very much for tuning in. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. May the force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolan Dart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hovercart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the HoloNet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Khan. I am the chief here on Kamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pac 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
So you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad. We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.